Thank you. Good evening, students. How are you doing today? So we were discussing a very important chapter on exemptions. So the exemption subject is a little voluminous subject, and it becomes important because you might get a compounded question from various chapters, wherein this one item or one of the aspects will be on exemptions. There'll be doing a question on a series of supplies made by a person, and they will include some categories which you will have to recognize if it is exempted. And if it is exempted, then you'll have to classify that as exemption and say that value will be 0. And why is what you'll have to explain it. So in the problem solving session, when we do, we'll go in this in detail, what are the steps in problem solving and what is it that you may consider the value as 0. So if you consider a value as 0, you'll have to give a reasoning for it, or any value for the matter of the submissions. If it is clearly there in the question, if you're writing the same value, it's fine. But if you have a different value than what is given in your question paper, then you'll have to give an explanation for it. So every explanation also is your understanding of the topic. So it's very important you give explanation for your numbers. Okay, so let's start this because exemption we had started last week at a slow pace. Now we'll have to hurry up because there are a lot of exemptions, and then we'll have to take also what one of our friend had referred to, the statutory updates, because if we see the statutory updates, then we know that, okay, these are the updates, and the most likely thing is that they will ask questions from the updates. So it is better that we brush up on the statutory updates as well. Okay, so my friends here have started asking question. Ishan is asking, sir, can rehabilitation professional charge? There is no limit over there. Like how healthcare can charge any amount, a doctor can charge any amount. Similarly, healthcare professionals, rehabilitation professionals also can charge any amount. There's no cap over there. Okay. Why horse is not exempted? Because they've treated horse as not a agriculture or as a normal animal. Generally, they use horses for either for commercial purposes or for racing purposes. So that's why they've kept horse out of those rearing of animals provision. If agriculture produce sold as primary produce, then it is exempted. Yes, then it is exempted. Warehousing for only primary agriculture produce is exempted. Yeah, primarily agriculture produce and rice is exempted. What is the difference between primary market and the retail market? Primary market means wherein a farmer produces and brings it to a market to sell it, right? That is called as a primary market. All this marketing yards, the APMC yards, right? Wherein agriculture produce products are kept. That is a yard where the goods are being sold by the farmer at a first level. From there, it goes to various levels. So that level is called as a primary market. Please explain auxiliary course and vocational education course. Yeah, so vocational education courses, there are there in this education services. I'll show you that slide. Educational institutions approved education as a part of a approved vocational education course. Now, what is approved vocational education course is also defined in the section, and it says approved vocational education course is course run by a industrial training institute. So all of the special courses, like we have skill development courses, right? Those are covered under this approved vocational education course. Now, these institutes provide these vocational education courses, and it has to be approved by this authority, which is the National Council for Vocational Training. That is the meaning of vocational education courses. Explain auxiliary course. There is no reference of auxiliary course as such. Only approved vocational course is what is being defined here. Rice is not exempt as per entry 55, but being an essential good, it attracts nil rate of tax, hence it's exempt. Correct. Sir, please explain amount charged by hospital from the patients. Yeah. So amount what is charged by the hospital to its patient is a healthcare services, and healthcare service is exempt. Now there is an amendment which says that if the hospital charges are more than 5,000 rupees, then they will have to collect the GST. Okay, that is one aspect. Now, what all the hospital collects from its patients is the hospital charges, treatment charges, any kind of surgery charges, ICU charges, all of that becomes a part of a healthcare service. So that is exempted. Now, if the hospital charges some medicines and consumables which it uses, will you pay GST on that separately? No, because the main service is hospital service, and we have seen what is a composite service and a mixed supply. So in a composite supply, the supply of the primary nature. What is the primary nature? Hospitalization. So these hospitalization services exempt. So all of this medicines becomes a supplementary service, and that also becomes exempted. Now, what other thing hospital charges? Hospital say charges rent for giving its shop or giving it to a canteen. That is all taxable. So purely hospital is healthcare services, and other services related to healthcare only will be exempted. Now, renting, marketing services, all of that will be taxable. Do certified computer courses come under vocational course? If they have taken approval, then it will be like, otherwise we had this Aptech Center, NIIT. So those, if they are taking approval, right, then it will be exempted. Otherwise, no. It is possible that they get approval for few of the courses, and few other courses it is not approved. So only for the approved courses they get the exemption. For others they may be taxable. Okay, so let's get into the next exemption, which is healthcare. We understood this. Next is government services. Now, what is government services? Services provided by the government. Okay, services provided by the government is exempted. Now, what all this is covered here are, and it is provided to the central government. CG means central government, SG means state government, LA means local authority, and UT means union territory. Any pure services or composite up to where the goods are up to 25% value, right? If you're providing goods and services combined together, if the value of the goods is less than 25%, which means what? If it is predominantly of a service nature, if it is 100% service, definitely it's exempt. And any composite up to the goods of 25%, and it is provided to central government, state government, local authority, or union territory, it is exempted. Okay. Plus government authority and government entity was there. Now we'll see in the amendment that this is also removed. For now, let us understand what was there prior. And then when we see the amendment, we'll know that what is the differentiation. So any kind of a pure services provided to the central government, state government, local authority, or union territory. What does pure service means? Suppose get the road sweep. Now this activity, if they outsource to a contractor, now this contractor will say, okay, I will provide my labor and they will do the sweeping work. So is it supply of the materials? No, this is supply of labor, which is a pure service nature. So such pure services, if this contractor is providing to the central government, state government, local authority, or union territory, it will be completely exempted. Or if he's providing, say, any kind of a cleaning services where some materials are involved, if these materials are less than 25%, then that will be exempted. Up to 25% of the composite supply, where the value of the materials is 25%, that will also be exempted. Now, if this central government, state government, local authority provides services to another authority, within government also there could be cross services. So if a company, any service provider is providing services to the central government, state government, or local authority, that is definitely exempt. Now, from one government to another government authority, like if the local authority provides services to the parliament, okay, then if they charge something on that, there will not be GST, because they've said any services from one central government, state, and is exclusion from supply definition itself. When we saw section 7, we saw that under 7, any services provided by the government as public authorities, provided as per provisions of Article 243W, 243G, and 243W. What is 243G and 243W? 243G says that services of panchayat services. Okay, so where in non-urban places there is a panchayat, right? And panchayat system still works there. So the panchayat services or the municipality services. If in the cities you have municipality services. So all of these services provided by the municipality or the panchayat is exempted. Okay. So what does it cover? Any municipality services like you have water supply boards, right? It is all guided by the state municipality authorities. Now these services, how do they get charged? They get their remuneration by collecting some water charges. Now these on water charges, whatever we pay to the government, that is exempted. So if you see in your water bill, there will not be any GST if it is by the municipal authority. But if this municipal authority outsource the work of maintaining municipality to a private authority, then the private authority will tax it. Okay. So water services or any other services for which they receive consideration, that will be exempted. 243G and 243W. Similarly, panchayat services, if the panchayat services providing to rural people any kind of services and they're collecting some consideration on that, also GST will not be there because it is under no supply category. In section 7 itself, they've said on this, there will not be any, it will not be treated as supply. Then we saw that there was an explanation, right? The explanation I had given saying that supply of alcoholic liquor license, right? It is not a supply because alcoholic liquor is outside GST. So alcoholic liquor license is also given by way of notification that this will be exempted. Okay. Then Department of Posts. Department of Posts providing services to government. Okay. Department of Posts, not all services, specific services. And because all services, all other services like speed post, insurance services, SALE, SP is speed post, AS is auxiliary services, LIC is life insurance, and EP is electronic post. So all of this SALE, that's the short form I've used it. So sale services provided is liable to GST, right? So if they provide this sale services, speed post and things like that, so they will not decide whether the recipient is a government or non-government. On that, it will always be chargeable at forward charge. Okay. Now, what are these services? Speed post, allied services, life insurance services, and EP services. So on these 4 services, it will always be charged under forward charge. What is the example of allied services? Passport, bonds, mutual funds, whatever commissions they get on sale of mutual funds, on that will be taxable under forward charge. Other services like inland post, postal cards, money orders are always exempted, right? So postal cards, the stamps of what they collect, money orders, what they do. Yes, sir? Okay. So all of these 3 activities are exempted, 4 activities are taxable under forward charge, and all other services are taxable if it is provided to general public. But if it is provided to a government, then it will be exempted. Okay, that's with respect to Department of Post. Can we repeat pure services again? Yeah, pure services means where I'm providing only services, labor services, or any kind of a support service to the government. Like government may need that their payroll has to be processed by outside authorities. Generally, they don't. They keep it inside. But say some kind of verification whether the TDS has been deducted rightly. So all these kind of pure services, what we provided by a private entity, that will be exempted because it's a pure service provided to the central government. Not any kind of a 4 authorities: central government, state government, local authority, or union territory. So Department of Posts we understood. Then port or airport services. So based on the I've mentioned this, what are the exemptions which are available. Then next is port or airport services, which means any kind of a aircraft or vessel services, which is inside or outside, which means Airport Authority of India, when they charge something, right? What could they charge? They could charge from the aircraft companies, air traffic control charges. Then if the flight is being stayed there for a long time, they will charge something called as a freight hauling charges. Then in the airport, you have seen there are some stores. Now, who collects the rent from that? The rent is collected by the Airport Authority of India. So all of this port and airport services, there is no exemption. GST will be charged under forward charge mechanism. Okay. Then you have transportation services. Transportation could be of goods or transportation of passengers. What are we discussing? We are discussing these services by the government. Now, port or airport is provided by the Airport Authority of India, which is a government authority. So it will be taxable under forward charge. Then we have transportation services provided by the government, like buses and all what they tax. That will be again chargeable to GST under forward charge. Okay, so if it's provided by the government, will it be exempted? No, it will not be exempted. It will be taxable, but subject to transportation exemption. So if there is a non-AC transport, then it will be exempted. So that what is applicable to a private entity will apply even to a government entity. But if the private entities we have under transportation of passengers, that if it is provided in an AC bus, then it will be taxable. So government also will collect tax on that. No distinction between government and private services there. Then we have other category of renting of immovable property. So if it is renting of immovable property given by the government, we had seen this, right? We had seen this earlier also under reverse charge mechanism, that if it is provided to a registered person, renting of shops, renting of any kind of a commercial entity to a registered person, it will be under reverse charge. And if it is to an unregistered person, it will be under forward charge. Then all other services. These are specific services. Apart from that, if there are any other services provided, then you have to see whether it is provided to a business entity. Yes, if it is provided, then GST under reverse charge. Okay. If it is to a non-GST entity, non-business entity provided to a general public, then it is exempted. Okay. So government services, apart from those port, postal, transportation services and renting, any other services provided by the government is exempted if it is provided to the public, and it is under reverse charge mechanism if it is provided to a private entity or to a business entity. Now, what are the exemption to that? If my annual turnover in the previous financial year is less than by the registration limit, then again I can claim exemption, saying that I am a registered person, I'm a business entity, but I am not registered under GST, then it will be exempted. But if it is if my annual turnover, right, in the previous year financial year, PFI previous financial year is greater than the registration limit, then if it is a non-government entity, you have to check. Okay, if I am a non-government entity, then if the consideration is less than 5,000, then it is exempt. If the consideration is more than 5,000, only then I have to pay RCM. Such a complication, right? But we'll understand this. Suppose you have your government. The government is provided services to you. So first check whether you are getting the 4 category of services: postage, transportation, renting of immovable property, and there's one more service, right, which is aircraft services. If that 4, then the category will be decided in those 4 categories, what you have decided first. Any other services provided by the government, you have to pay. You have to see if you are registered. If you are non-registered, no GST. If your turnover is more than the registration limit and you have taken registration or not taken registration, whichever case, right, then you have to check what is the value of the thing what you're paying. So if you're paying some consideration which is up to 5,000 rupees, then it is exempt. If your consideration is more than 5,000, then it is taxable for you under reverse charge. And again, if it is provided to another government entity, from one government entity to another government entity, it is always taxable. It is always exempted. From one government entity to another government entity, it will always be exempted. What could be the example? Could be a police authority providing safety to a judge or a MLA, right? So they may charge some consideration. So will they charge GST on this? No, because there is an exemption thing from one government entity to another government entity, it is exempted. Clear with this? And specifically exempted special services. What is this specifically exempted special services? Guaranteeing of loans. So this special services is given through various notifications at various places. So we have consolidated here. guaranteeing loans to government undertakings or public sector undertakings. So if I am giving a guarantee saying that a public sector undertaking is there, now they want a loan. Now bank is saying they'll give you a loan, but get a guarantee from your government authorities. So government authority will say, okay, we guarantee that if this public sector undertakings or a government undertaking wants loan, and if they do not fulfill any criteria or the default, we will take the responsibility and make sure that your loan is not defaulted. So for this, what the government will do, they will levy some charges from these public sector undertakings. So this consideration, what is being charged for giving of guarantees. Now this guarantee given to government authorities and public sector undertakings only is exempted. Now if a holding company gives a guarantee to a subsidiary company, and subsidiary company says we are going to the bank, we don't have any guarantee, you have to give us a guarantee. Holding company says, okay, we'll give you, and we are charging some consideration for this. So that consideration will be taxable if it is a public company or a private limited company. But if it is a government guarantee given by the government to a public sector undertaking or a government undertaking, then it will be exempted, but not to any other authorities. Registered services received under any law. So like earlier, we have services provided by the government for registration. Under the VAT law, they used to charge VAT registration fees. Under GST, when you register, there is nothing. But say like a property registration you're doing. So they collect registration fees. Apart from stamp duty, there is something called as a registration fees which they collect. So on this registration fees, there will not be GST. So these are special services which is always exempt. Now, it is exempt when they provide to a private or a public also. Then testing, calibration, or certification charges. How do they do testing? ISI does testing, right? ISI or any labs are there, government labs, which provides this calibration. Calibration is checking the alignment, right? So this testing, calibration, or certification charges, which is provided by the government to public, is also exempt. Then passport, when you get, you have to pay some passport fees, right? So those passport, visa, driving license, birth certificate or death certificate, on that also it is exempted. Then tolerating non-performance of contract, right? Like any fines or liquidated damages which is collected by the government. Now, what is liquidated damages? Saying that I have entered into a contract with the government. I'm a individual contractor. I have entered into a contract for construction of roads. Now, I said I will get it completed within 1 year time. Now, if it is beyond 1 year, then I will pay you liquidated damages. So because of my non-performance, I am paying some liquidated damages. So the compensation what I pay for not doing the work on time or not doing the work as per the contract is some fine I have to pay, which is called as liquidated damages. Now on this liquidated damages, when I pay to the government, it is exempted. Okay. Then assignments of right to use natural resources. Now, when I give my right, and government gives the right to exploit some natural resources. How do they give? Saying that this land is there, you can take all the iron ores, the steels from it, but you have to pay me some consideration. So this amount what we pay for assigning of the right to the government is exempted. Then deputing officer after office hours, like after office hours for long time, so overnight, over time, we have to give some charges for at the ports. So at the ports, whatever charges is being collected, right? And inspection and container stuffing charges, like a lot of containers have come in, we need to work extra. For that consideration, what is collected is exempted. Then excess royalty collection contractor to collect royalty on behalf of the central government, other state government. So in the mines, you will see that there are contractors who are sitting and they will help the government in collection of excess royalty collection, which means that there is a exploitation of the ores, right? Now, when they exploit something, they have to pay a consideration. There'll be a contractor who will be sitting there and collecting the royalty, and he will give this royalty to the government, but for providing this service, he will charge something. So this royalty collection charges is also exempted. Then again, your service of rehabilitation professionals to rehabilitation center run by the government. So where order services I provided as a rehabilitation center to the government is exempted. And to old age home, we had seen there, right? Or a charitable organization, any old age home where it will be exempted if the old age home, right? If that old age home, no, rehabilitation center is fine. Old age home is a separate thing. Services of old age home where the consideration up to 25,000 rupees per month run by the government. So there also there is a limit of 25,000 rupees per month. When we register, then GST is payable? No, because on registration, that is the registration services, I don't think, because that is also coming under registration services required under any law. So that is also being exempted. Sir, please explain renting of rooms, premises, and shops by charitable trust. So, when any kind of a rooms are provided by a charitable trust, then if the rent is up to rupees 999 per day per person or per day for the room, if they're charging 999, then it is exempt. Above that, if they charge anything, it will be taxable. Then within the premises, if they're giving any shops, right? Or shops, if they're giving, if the rent is 9,999 per month, then it is exempt. If it is 10,000 and above, it will become taxable. Then if they're giving any mantaps or any place for any kind of ceremony or marriage, then in that case, if the per day rental is up to 9,999, it is exempt. Otherwise, it will be taxable. So that is more on the government services in a complete manner. Complete government service. Otherwise, if you take without the chart, it is such a theoretical thing to understand that it becomes tough. That's why we have to read it in a concise manner and compiled manner so that we can understand and correlate it. Great. So, what are the other services? Just in case, services by governmental authority by way of any activity in relation to function entrusted to a municipality under 243W and panchayat under 243G, right? So 243W and 243G, services provided by the government authority for these services. Then services by the central government, state government, union territory or local authority, excluding the following services, which is the speed post services we have discussed. Speed post, express parcel post. The EP would mean the express parcel post. So speed post S, A for agency services, L for life insurance services, E is for express parcel. So these four services is always taxable under forward charge, right? Other than this, other services provided by the post to the government will be exempted. Services in relation to aircraft or vessel inside or outside the presence of a port or airport. Within the port or airport, services will be taxable under forward charge. Transport of goods or passengers under forward charge. Any services other than those covered provided to business entities will be under excluding, means provided by the private entity will be taxable, but if it is provided to another government, then it will be exempted. Then services provided by the central government, state government, union territory, or local authority to a business entity with an aggregate turnover of registration limit in the preceding financial year, excluding these services and service of renting of immovable property, right? So we have seen that specifically under our chart. Then service supplied by one government authority to another government authority is again exempted. Then supply of services except these three services, which is PAT, which is postal services, forward charge, airport and port services, forward charge, transportation services, forward charge. Other than this, all services provided by one government entity to another government entity will be exempted. Then very important, supply of services by way of by a government entity to central government, state government, union territory, local authority, or any person specified by the central government, by these government authorities, against consideration received in the form of grants. So any form of government grants received are exempted. So if I'm a private entity, I'm doing something for my roads, okay, and the government is giving me a grant. So my consideration, it can come from the buyer or it can come from the government. But if this consideration is coming from the government, then this is exempted. It will not be taxable. So grants provided by the government is exempted. Grants given by private entity to a trust, those are all taxable, right? You have to see the nature whether it's taxable. If it is a kind of a grant received by a non-government authority, then it is a taxable supply. Okay. Then services by an old age home, right? We have seen this services by an old age home run by the central government or state government or by an entity registered under 12AA of the IT Act to residents, again, consideration up to 25,000 rupees. So there was a confusion whether this 25,000 applies only to trust or to government. This applies both to trust and the government. So any services provided by the government or by a society or registered under 12AA charitable society, then it is exempt if the consideration up to 25,000 rupees per month per member. Loan guaranteeing services, right? We have seen this loan guarantee services where I give a guarantee to another public sector undertaking or a government authority and I charge consideration for it. That is also exempted. Registration required on any law like testing, safety, calibration, certification charges, those are all exempt. Roadways, bus charges are exempted and private bus services. No, roadways, if it is non-AC, it is exempted. If it is AC, it will be taxable. In transportation service, we'll understand that. In GST, there are exemption for amount limits of example 919 for room by charitable. So if 1,100 GST will be levied on excess of 100 or whole 1,100, it will be levied on the whole amount, not up to 919 exempt, not the case. Where the value of that room rent is below 999, it will be exempt. If it is 1,100, then on the whole 1,100, it has to be levied, not on the differential. What about the grants given by government? Grants given by government is exempted. What do you mean by grant? Grant is saying that a lump sum amount given, like scholarship, right? You have to pay fees, but you have to get some scholarship from the government, like that, for doing some activity, and the government wants to encourage that manufacturing line, right? Then what they will do is they will, for such entities who are fulfilling the criteria, they will say that we want to bring down the cost of your sale, what you're giving to your customers. So they will give some grant, right? So if they want to develop or encourage kind of a alternative energy of electricity, if you are developing kind of solar energy, right? And the government says you want to encourage it, so they will give you a grant. So this grant is exempted, is what is being said. Registration required under any law for the time being enforced, which means the law which is in existence, right? So now what is in existence? GST is in existence. VAT is not in existence. So any charges for registering under VAT, if they're collecting, then it will be taxable. Similarly, what is the registration required under the present law is exempted. Do we have to remember entry number? No, we don't have to remember. That's why in my slides, I have not given the entry number. You don't have to remember the entry number. Is grant something similar to subsidy? Yeah, you could say that, but grant is a whole one-time grant for the activities. It's not specific, but it's a general grant. But subsidy is for specific purpose, saying that for buying bags, I will give you subsidy. Like when we had this LPG gas subsidy, it was specifically for that buying of one cylinder, they used to give me subsidy. And other thing is, subsidy is given on fertilizers. So when I sell fertilizers, right, on that subsidy is given. So it's a specific thing, whereas grants are general. It is not specific. So any service provided by private entity to government or government to private entity, both are exempted? Yes, both are exempted. Construction of roads by government, construction of roads is exempted, but construction collection of this toll collection is taxable, because this on this toll there is no exemption. Then there may be birth certificates. Consideration of fines for liquidated damages. We know that we have spoken on this. Then assignment of a right to use natural resources to an individual farmer for cultivation. Assignments of rights to use natural resources to an individual farmer, right? So if you are giving a right to an individual farmer and he's paying you something, that is exempted. Okay. Deputing officers after office hours or on holidays for inspection or container stuffing or such other duties in relation to import-export cargo on payment of merchant overtime charges. Like specific people are sitting there to collect the royalty or collect the charges for inspection. On that also GST is not applicable. Then excess royalty collection contractor by way of assigning the right to use to collect royalty on behalf of the state government. So this work of collecting royalty at the time of wining, they collect royalty on behalf of the government, they collect and they charge something, that is also exempted. Charging VAT or any other tax is not exempted. No, I'm saying registration. For registration, whatever is being collected, that is exempted. For that, somebody was asking what is the meaning of this registration required under the any law for the time being enforced, which means what is an existing law. For the existing law, if you're collecting anything, that will be exempted. Okay, let's get into the next service. Construction services, right? What on construction services GST is exempted? Any kind of construction, right? If I construct flat, is it exempted, sir? No. Construction and all kind of alteration activities pertaining to beneficiary-led individual housing construction or enhancement under what? Under Housing for All Mission. So government has a scheme called as a Housing for All Mission, or it could, there's another scheme called as a Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, right? So under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, they'll identify a person who is a low grade income and he has to buy a house, right? For that, government will say, okay, we'll give you a house and we'll collect some consideration, not be a full consideration, some partial consideration they collect. So for this construction, whenever contractor is giving the work, is given the work by the government, now he has to get a certificate from the government saying that he is awarded the contract under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Then he can do construction work, erection work, commissioning work. So any kind of a sub work also is covered, right? So any kind of a construction work, erection, commissioning, installation, completion, fitting out, even repairs, maintenance work, renovation work, alteration. So it means one construction, or it could be any activity related to construction, because there's so many terms which have been used: erection, fitting, installation, repairs also is included, renovation, maintenance, or any other original works, right? Not a kind of a secondary work, where original work is done, then it is exempted. Okay. Then construction, erection, commissioning, installation of originals pertaining to a single residential unit. Right? You have seen that if you buy a flat or apartment, then GST is applicable. But if it's a construction of a single unit, then on that GST is not applicable. So very important. If you buy a flat, you have to pay GST. But if you do a individual self-construction, if it is of original works, of course, when you're building a building, it is an original work. But if you do any repair and services, then it will be taxable. But original building, for which you are giving work to a contractor, and contractor bills and gives it to you, on his bill, he should not charge GST, because construction, erection, commissioning, or installation of original works pertaining to a single residential unit, right? It is exempted. Notes aren't uploaded. Notes will be updated. Don't worry. I wanted to discuss this and then wanted to send it. So that's why I haven't shared it. Right. So original services supplied by way of pure labor services is exempted. Then what is the other construction services? Services supplied by electricity distribution utility. So this is also coming under construction, because they are developing or constructing a electricity distribution utilities. Now, what is this exemption for? This exemption is for construction by way of construction, erection, commissioning, or installation of infrastructure for extending electricity distributing networks up to the tube well of the farmer. What's happening is government is saying the electricity board is constructing electricity lines. Now, when they are putting these electricity lines, there is a farmer who is having his tube well, like because he also wants to run the electricity, put the water from the underwater to his fields. So he's putting a tube well. So he's saying the government that your lines are going that side, bring that line extension up to my place, right? So government is saying, okay, we'll give you the extra line. For that, you have to pay me these charges. So this deviation or distribution of main line to the subline, okay, is called as a infrastructure for extending the electricity distribution network. Actually, my line is going this. I have to give this small extension from my line to the farmer. So this consideration given by the farmer, don't collect tax on this because this is exempted. Okay, so the tube well of the farmer or agriculturist for agriculture use is exempted. Clear with this? Now this we understood. Now the other thing is in case of a supply of TDR, FSI, okay, or long-term lease, transferable development rights. Even in the construction, we had understood this. What is a transferable development right? Wherein I have a right to construct extra floor, and now I don't want it, and I'm selling it to a builder. Now this supply of TDR, FSI, or long-term lease, for which you're collecting premium by the landowner to a developer, is exempted under specific conditions. What are those specific conditions? That the constructed flats are sold before issuance of completion certificate and taxes is paid. If the flats have been, when I give the services of TDR, when I collect premium from the landowner, okay, it will be exempted. But if provided that the builder sells those flats before issuance of the completion certificate, because then government is collecting the taxes. But if it is sold after the completion certificate, it means on that flats, it becomes an immobile property, so you cannot collect GST on it. So if you're not collecting GST, then pay tax on what we gave exemption for your purchases. It's effectively a purchases. You're buying TDRs, you're buying FSIs. So this TDRs and FSIs will become taxable if on the completion certificate there are some flats which are being unsold. So proportionately, you will have to pay tax on that, right? Now, if the exemption is withdrawn to the extent flats are sold after the completion, it will be taxed at 1% or 5% respectively. So if it's affordable housing, then 1%. If it's non-affordable housing, 5%. Okay. So see, the taxable event is supply of this TDR. When I give this TDR and FSI to the builder, that time the tax is triggered, subject to the time of supply is postponed. The levy triggers at this point when I give this TDRs, but the point of supply is decided on the date of completion certificate. If on the date of completion certificate, all my flats have been sold, then there is no GST on this reverse charge. But if there are some flats which are unsold, then on this TDRs, okay, which I have taken like 5 years back and my completion certificate has come now. So whatever benefit you enjoy that you'll have to pay now at the time of completion certificate. So at the time of completion certificate, it's very important. You have to see whether all the flats are being sold. Good. If not, to the extent of unsold flats, you have to pay the GST. Flats are taxable now. Yes, flats are taxable because it is an construction services. And if they have not received the completion certificate up to that point, whatever consideration they receive, they will charge it. But if they sell flats after completion certificate, then there is no GST. Why so? Because if they get the completion certificate, it becomes a property, which means that it is fit for occupation. Without completion certificate, it's not fit for occupation. So it means you're selling something in bits and packets. So it will be taxable till then. After completion certificate, it becomes exempted. All the services of erection and installation should be provided under PM Awas Yojana. Yes, only under PM Awas Yojana, not under other cases. Construction of bungalow by builder, no GST, but on purchase of bungalow, GST applicable? No, on construction, no GST. On purchase of bungalow, again, no GST because it's an immobile property. Only on construction of a new flat, there it doesn't become an immobile property until you get a completion certificate. Until then, it is a kind of a mobile property which is being fitted, right? So it's a mobile property of stones, rocks, bricks, woods, which they're giving it, right? So once you're giving this, then it is an immobile property. It's a mobile property till the date of completion certificate. Please explain withdrawal of exemption. Withdrawal of exemption means I gave you an exemption saying that I will not charge, don't charge GST on reverse charge for the TDRs what you're getting. Because if I collect tax now, and then again on the sale, if I collect, then it will become double taxes. So government is saying, okay, on the TDRs, you don't pay GST, but you ensure that you sell all your flats before completion certificate. So if you're selling it, okay, when you're selling it, you will anyways collect tax, 5% tax on that, no problem for me. So I will not ask you to pay tax on the receipt of TDRs. But if you don't sell, then it's a loss to me because you're not giving me revenue on your sales side because you have sold all your flats before. If you're selling all your flats after completion certificate, then you're not collecting any GST. If you're not collecting any GST, there's a loss to the government. Therefore, they're saying that, okay, if you're selling it, then you're collecting GST, don't pay me reverse charge. If you're not collecting GST, which means after completion certificate, what you're selling, if it is not getting collected, then you pay me GST on your inward supplies. That is only on TDR, FSI and long term, not on anything else. So please explain withdrawal of exemption. Okay. What about villas? Same. Houses, villas, everything is same. Construction of bungalow or a villa, it is a single unit. So if this single unit has been constructed, then it is exempted. But if there are multiple units, it will be taxable. Okay. We understood transport government services. Let's move to transportation services. We are saying no transportation service when we go, we'll decide whether government has to charge or not charge. So first is transportation could be of two types. Transportation of passengers or transportation of goods. First, we'll understand transportation of passengers. So transportation of passengers, we have air transport, road transport, railway or water transport. So for air transport, we have this embarking or terminal. Generally, all air services are taxable, but this embarking from these special places, Pak Dogra, Arunachal Pradesh, Tripura, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram. So how do you understand this? Batman, PATMMMANS. So I've made a small acronym that if you are taking your journey from these ports or landing at these ports, like Batman's port, these specific places which needs to get developed. So if these needs to get developed, then you will have to give them exemption. So that's why when you're taking flights from here or reaching here, the charges has to be low. So that's why they're given exemption over here. Then if there is a viability gap funding, if any viability gap funding means the government will give viability gap funding for new airports. So if they're giving to new airports, on that also they will not charge GST. So viability gap funding given by the government to the authorities for improving the airports for the first few years, that is also exempt up to 3 years from the commencement of operation of that airport. So up to 3 years from the commencement of special airports, it will be exempted. So this Batman's exemption is separate, viability gap funding is separate. Then road. Under road, there could be various things. One is stage carrier. Stage carrier means from one stage to another stage, which is the local buses and interstate buses. What we see this government buses, generally government buses, but private buses also can be there. That will be, if it is a non-AC, then it is exempt. If it is AC, it is taxable. So stage carriage or contract carriage, both AC buses will be like. Similarly, contract carriage could be for cab and other things. If it is non-AC, it is exempt. If it is AC, it is taxable. Radio taxis, both AC and non-AC are taxable. Tourism, taxable. Conducted tour, so wherein a tour has been taken care. For the tour, you give a package, that is taxable. Like the government buses also take you on a tour. So on that tour, they also have to pay GST because it's a conducted tour. Or a charter or hire, wherein you're taking from for a specific time, that is also taxable. So it means that specific time we take Ola and Uber, that is taxable. But if you're taking any kind of a local transport from a local, like in your Mumbai, you'll see that black color cabs are there. Okay, though they are called as all carriages, contract carriages. So if it is a non-AC car, it is exempt. If it's an AC car, it will be taxable. Then metered cab. Metered cab. So those are all examples of metered cab. Metered cab, auto rickshaws, e-rickshaws. Only auto rickshaws and e-rickshaws are exempted. E-rickshaws means electrical rickshaws. So auto rickshaws and e-rickshaws are exempted, but cabs, if it is non-AC, it is exempted. If it is AC, it is taxable. Then railway, metro rail. Want to encourage this metro rail, monorail and tramway is exempted. Railways, non-AC is exempted, but AC and first class is taxable. Okay, the general Indian Railways, non-AC is exempted, and AC and first class is taxable. In case of metro, monorail and tramway, it is exempted for now. They may get withdrawn, but as of now, it is exempted. Then water. In few places, water also is used. The ships and boats are used for transporting of passengers. Like in the coastal areas, they'll have to move from one place to another. In between, there is a sea. So they use boats. Now this, if it's used as a public transport, then it is exempted. If it is used for tourism or transport outside India, then it is taxable. Then inland waterways, which is within the vicinities of India, inland waterways like backwaters are exempted, provided if it is for public, for both tourism or public transport, both are exempted if it's inland waterways. So that is transportation of passengers. Then we'll go to transportation of goods. Transportation of goods, again, 4 methods: road, rail, water, and air. So if it is by road, transportation of goods by road, if it's a courier, then it's taxable. If it is GTA, we know about this GTA very well, right? GTA is taxable either under forward charge or reverse charge. If he's charging under forward charge, then he will have to give a declaration that he's charging under forward charge. If he's not charging, then it is under reverse charge. Okay. Then RCM study reference, we have seen this. If it is unregistered to an unregistered person, it is exempt. So GTA providing services to a taxable person under forward charge, reverse charge. If it is GTA providing service to an unregistered person, it is exempt. What else? Services of a GTA are exempted. Specified goods are exempt. So if you transport some specified goods, then it becomes exempted. What is this random? Random means relief materials, agriculture produce, newspapers and magazines, defense or military equipments. O stands for organic manure, or M stands for milk, salts. Okay, all this basic products: milk, salt, food grains, flour, pulses, rice. Okay, if these are these milk products, then also it is exempted. So when you have to send some material on relief and you use the transporter, then it is exempted. You don't have to pay under reverse charge. Agriculture produce also exempted. Newspapers and magazines. Okay, so daily newspapers are being transported, so then they don't charge GST from them. Defense or military equipments also no GST. Organic manure, no GST. Milk, salt, food grains, flour, pulses, rice, again no GST. So if I'm using anything apart from this, it will be taxable under reverse charge. Then you have this specific exemption, but this is gone now because this was there earlier. This is gone now, which is single carriage and single consignee. Like they were limit, but this is gone, so we'll not read this. Then GTA to government entity, government department, central government, state government, local authorities. So any kind of a transport we've seen, no, in the previous slide. So government transportation of passengers to government is exempted, right? Like for government employees, they give buses. So this buses providing services for transportation of government employees will not be liable to GST. So that is road transport. Not buses and things. Buses are there under passenger. Now, for any transportation of materials to government is exempted. Then railways is taxable. What is exempt? Only those random goods. Okay, and railway equipment and materials. Apart from random goods, in railway, what is exempted? This railway equipment and materials. If it is transported by the rails, they don't charge. Then water transport of goods. Again, inland transport, inland waterways of good of passenger or inland waterways of goods, both are exempted. Then in terms of a vessel means a ship. Now if it is for a coastal transport, it is taxable. What is exempt? Again, random goods. Coastal transport will become taxable, right? International transport, it is from India to outside. It is exempted, but now it is taxable because this exemption was there only up till 30th September 2020. So India to outside, it is now also taxable, and outside to India, right? If it's an Indian shipping company, then they will charge under forward charge. If it's a foreign shipping company, then it is under reverse charge. Okay. So for international transportation, if I'm sending from India to outside India, it is always taxable. From outside to India, then it could be under forward charge. Wherein the shipping company, depends on the shipping company. If it's an Indian shipping company, they will charge me under forward charge. If it's a foreign shipping company, they cannot charge me GST, right? Because they're not there registered in India. So in that case, I will pay under reverse charge. Okay. So that's with respect to international transport and coastal transport. Fully covered the water transport of goods. Now air transport. If we are using a international travel, international movement from outside India to India, it is exempted. But from India to outside, it was exempt. Now it is taxable. So from India to outside India, it is taxable. From outside India to India, it is exempted. And for domestic air, it is taxable. Clear with this? If multiple villas are there, it means the builder is selling the multiple villas, he will charge GST. But what was the question was, if I'm doing a villa and doing a construction of individual villa is exempted. If we have 10 flats, say we sell 5 before completion, 5 after completion, then GST on TDR on 5 flats will be correct. GST on TDR will be on 5 flats, which is not sold. So proportionate. Can you explain viability gap funding? Yes, viability gap funding means the ports needs to get developed. For that, they need some money, and government wants to encourage the infrastructure, and they will have to give some money for the development of ports or airports. So for the development of ports, what funding is given by the government to this airport development is exempted. Please explain local buses and inside buses. So local buses and inside buses is this, wherein local buses will be local buses and interstate buses. Local buses and interstate buses is stage carriage. So this stage carriage services, if you go to the airport, sometimes you have a AC bus. So if it's an AC bus, it will be taxable. If it's a non-AC bus, it will be exempted. What are relief materials? Say in case of flood or in case of this railway accident, you have to send some relief materials for relief of floods, earthquakes, tsunami, or any kind of a incident which has happened, and you have to send some relief materials. So for transporting of these relief materials, it is exempted. Sir, international flights from outside to India. From outside to India, here we are seeing International flights from outside to India is exempted. From India to outside is taxable. If by water transport India to outside India to outside is taxable. Now outside to India, because India to outside, you know that starting is this place itself, starting from India. So the transporter is from India, it is under forward charge, regular tax. From outside to India, the ship could be owned by a foreign shipping company. If it's a foreign shipping company, then he will deliver the goods over here and I have to pay freight. No, I will pay freight. The government cannot catch hold of this international freight because he will deliver the goods and he'll go off. Right? So I have to pay under reverse charge. But if it is a Indian freight, then the Indian freight company has to pay under forward charge. What is regional connectivity scheme airport? Regional connectivity scheme is wherein they need to connect various ports, right? There has to be a connectivity scheme that's called as a regional connectivity scheme. This viability gap funding is RCS, which is regional connectivity scheme itself. Okay. So we majorly understood. So don't worry that I'm going fast because this just to understand the concept. So if you go through and revise this charts, you will understand this very easily. There's nothing much complicated. It's just lengthy, but not complicated. Right to admission to these places. Now, right of admission is a special service wherein if there is a right of entry, which means if there's entry charges for the museum, national park, wildlife sanctuary, tiger reserve, and zoo, right? Wherein it is kind of a recreation, but for a educational purpose also. Like children like to go to the museum to explore a lot of things, and if they go to this wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, right? The government is generally held by these government itself, by the forest department. So they want to encourage a lot of tourists. That's why there is no GST on that. So any value what is being collected by the tiger reserve or zoo, on that no GST. Now, or to any protected monuments, like in some places, monuments are protected by the archaeological department, and there is a board which is there saying that this is under the maintenance of archaeological department, and they collect some entry charges. So if it's a protected monument, right, like ancient sites and archaeological sites and remote art or state act, okay, or any state act what they have, it will be exempted for any value, which means any kind of a government thing will be exempted for any value. But if you go to any kind of a water park, theme park, exhibition, cinema hall, film city, amusement park, all of that will be taxable. So entry to government locations, which means government museums, government parks, wildlife sanctuaries, all of that will be exempted. Then entry to circus, dance, theatrical performance, including drama or ballet. Okay, so ballet performance, all of that will be exempted if the consideration up to rupees 500 rupees. Wherein the entry fees, if you're charging 500, then it will be exempted. If you're collecting 550, then on the whole 550 it will be taxable. Not that okay, 550 so 500 exempt, 50 taxable. No. If the consideration is up to 500 rupees per month, then it will be exempted. 500 per person, not month. If one entry per person, the ticketing charges is 500, then it will be exempted. So government, any value, non-government specific places, which is circus, dance, theatrical performance, award function, concert, right? Or any sporting event, or any recognized sporting event. RSC means recognized sporting event. Any recognized sporting event or planetarium all of this will be exempted if the entry fees is up to rupees 500. If it is more than 500, and the whole thing, it is taxable. Then related to this is when you enter to a concert, who will be there? An artist. So this artist will be collecting taxes. Let us see. Service by an artist by way of performance. So if you are providing any performance in folk or classical art form, which is music, dance, or theater, it is exempt if the consideration up to 1.5 lakhs. Up to 1.5 lakhs, it will be exempted. In Bollywood songs, it is taxable. If they're providing to anybody as a brand ambassador, then it is taxable. So here there is no monetary limit. But in case of a folk, classical, and music, theater, dance, it will be exempted if the artist is charging up to 1.5 lakh. So entry fees, we saw that these places, if I do any entry, I will get exemption if it is, I don't have to pay GST if they are collecting up to 500 rupees. If they are collecting 1000 rupees, gone. 1000 they will charge plus GST also have to pay. Fine. Now, who about the performers? If these performers are doing what kind of performance? If they are doing any classical, Kathakali, Bharatanatyam, Kuchipudi, all of this classical or folk form of music or dance or theatric performance, it will be exempted if these artists are collecting up to 1.5 lakhs. If they are collecting more, then it will be taxable. In Bollywood songs, any value, it is always taxable. As a brand ambassador, if they're doing something, right, then as a brand ambassador, it is completely taxable. What if the container is being shipped between two foreign countries and Indian port is used only as a pit stop? So the Indian port, whatever charges the levy on that, they have to pay GST because there is no exemption there. Good question. So passenger transport by air, ME, international and domestic, both have been taxable. Yes. Air transportation is definitely taxable. Airports, the flight ticket, whatever you charge, both is taxable. So domestic airport or international travel, GST is chargeable. Exemption or right to admission. Exemption of right to admission only for government events. No, not the government events. Like if this dance and performance is conducted by the government, it will continue with the same thing that if it is up to 500 rupees per month per person, then it is exempt. It will otherwise it will be taxable. Why I gave you government to understand is to remember these things because generally we see that museums, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, monuments, tiger reserves, and zoo are held by the government. That's why I was using, but at least they have not used the word government anywhere for our remembrance. I'm saying that museums, national parks, zoos, all of that will be exempted for any value. So if the proceeds of such a cultural performance are donated to a charitable organization, will such proceeds still be charged? Yes, still it will be charged because the exemption is specific, not a general saying that, okay, if you use for charitable thing, it will be exempted. No. If they are collecting some charges and it is beyond the limits, it will always be taxable. Okay. So let's take a break over here because government services and this was very heavy. After this, we'll discuss some light exemptions and then we'll take MCQs and some question answers so that we can understand this in much detailed manner. So we'll take a break of 10 minutes here. Thank you. Passenger transport, you have understood. Some more queries here are, if the proceeds of a cultural program are donated to a charitable organization, still it will be taxable. In university, when some singer is come, the tickets have GST, correct? Because there the value is more than 500 rupees and it will be taxable. Their 500 limit actually will not apply, because if you see here, it is only on award function, concert, pageant, musical performance and things. So a fest generally in a college will not fall under this, so it will be taxable for any value. Bollywood dance performance means dancing in any program, or in film it applicable. So Bollywood dance programs means any dance program which is not a cultural program, right? So if it is not a cultural program, Bollywood program, or anything else other than cultural program, it will be taxable anyway. Services provided by the government to banking or non-banking institutions are exempted or not. So services provided by government means who will provide services to a banking or non-banking company, be provided by the RBI. They will monitor the performance. They'll see all the transactions. So RBI is the government. So RBI services are exempt services. So in statutory update, it is given that all services of Department of Post are taxable. Yes. So we'll read that statutory update, so that what we have read, we'll have a refresh over there, and we will know that what is the differentiation, so that we'll get covered over there. Okay. Now, Residential Welfare Association. Now, look at Residential Welfare Association annual turnover. What is a Residential Welfare Association? To get the background, it's an association. Generally, a Residential Welfare Association means an apartment wherein all the flat owners are there. Now they have formed a Residential Welfare Association. In this Residential Welfare Association, they are paying a consideration on a monthly basis, like contribution, like maintenance charges. Now, on this maintenance charges, is GST liable or no is the question. To determine this, first of all, Residential Welfare Association itself is a separate person. So if this person's turnover is below 20 lakhs, because Residential Welfare Associations providing services to its members, so it's a service entity. So service entity, the limit is 20 lakhs. So if this Residential Welfare Association's turnover, which is the collections, if the collections is below 20 lakhs, no GST at the face of it itself. But if it is less than 20 lakhs, no GST at all. Okay. But if it is more than 20 lakhs, then you have to see how much is the collection value, which means the collection from each association, from each member, right? Now, first is association per se. First is the total collection for the year. If the total collection for the year is less than 20 lakhs, no GST at all. If it is more than 20 lakhs, then if the collection per month is up to 7,500, exempted. If it is more than 7,500, then it is taxable. Okay. So first is look at the Residential Welfare Association's annual turnover and your monthly maintenance charges to figure out if GST has to be paid. Okay. So total turnover, you have seen that your total collections is more than 20 lakhs. Come on. So tax liability will come. So if it is more than 20 lakhs, tax liability will come. If the monthly maintenance charges is more than 7,500, if it is more than 7,500, then exemption, no exemption, it will be taxable. So what, sir, if I collect 8,000 rupees, will you charge GST on 500? No, on full 8,000, it will be taxable. Monthly maintenance charges more than 7,500, full value pay tax. If it is less than 7,500, fully exempt. Then if the collection itself is less than 20 lakhs, then your collection from your maintenance could be more than 75, less than 75, it is fully exempt, because your collection itself is less than 20 lakhs, you don't have to register. But no, I want to register, sir. Here, if you want to register, then if it is up to 7,500, no GST, don't collect GST from them. If you're collecting charges more than 7,500, then you collect GST from them. Now, this limit of 7,500 is to be seen per flat, per month, per member basis. Per flat, and per month basis. Which means if I'm having two houses, and for one house it is 4,000, another house 4,000, both put together 8,000, it is crossing 7,500. Should I collect GST? No, it is per house. For this house, if it is 4,000, exempt. For this house, it is 7,000, exempt. For another house, if it is 8,000, for that house, you will have to collect GST. But if it is individual house, less than 7,500, no GST. Clear with Residential Welfare Association? So it will be depend on number of members, correct? Depend on collection from the members, not number of members. Numbers could be more. If you're collecting, say, 500 rupees from each member, so any number of members, it's fine. So collection total collection should be less than 20 lakhs, then you're exempted. Otherwise, you'll be taxable. Taxable also when if your collection from one member is more than 7,500 rupees. So because of the size, say my house is small, my neighbor house is big, he is paying more of say 8,000, I am paying 7,000. From me, they will not collect GST. From him, they will collect GST because his value is 8,000 rupees, which is more than 7,500. Okay. Now, legal services. Legal services, supplier and receiver is very important. Supplier is a individual firm. Okay. And if it is providing to another individual firm to other individual firm, exempt. Individual firm to senior advocate, again exempt. Individual firm to a business entity, okay, whose gross receipts are under the specified limits, means they are below the registration limit, that is also exempt. Okay. But if it is providing to a business entity whose gross receipts exceeds the specified limit, then under reverse charge mechanism. Okay. So legal services, RCM, we say it is only under this category and not under any other category. Individual firm to a business entity who's exceeded the threshold limit. Only then RCM will come. If it's a business entity whose turnover is below the threshold limit, it will be exempt itself. It's not that if it is not under reverse charge, it will come under forward charge. No, it will be exempted itself. Then central government, state government, and local authority providing services to the government, exempt, and to any other person, means individual. How to understand this? I have gone for my legal drafting of a house and gone for agreement. If the lawyer is charging some fees, it is exempted. Okay. But if I'm doing it for my office, drafting of agreement for my office, it's a business entity and my turnover is below the specified threshold limit, I have to pay GST at 18% under reverse charge mechanism. Okay. Then senior advocate providing service to an individual advocate. Individual advocate to another individual advocate exempt, but senior advocate to individual exempt. Individual, is it exempt? No, it will become taxable because the wordings are such that from a legal to other business entity. So individual also is a business entity. So senior advocate providing to another individual advocate, it will be taxable under forward charge. From one senior advocate to another senior advocate, again forward charge. Senior advocate to business entity below the threshold limit, exempt. Above threshold limit, reverse charge. Again, government exempt and any other person also exempt. Similarly, arbitral tribunal also same. Arbitral tribunal providing services to other advocate or to another senior advocate is taxable under forward charge. Business entity below threshold exempt, above threshold reverse charge, and government exempt, any other person exempt. What is the specified limit? For each state, it is different. Ishan, for services, it is 20 lakhs. For goods, some special category states have 20 lakhs. Some other states are 40 lakhs. So when you see registration chapter, you will get to know the limit. That limit you have to apply. Sir, so no payment on any flat will not be included. Sir, non-payment by any flat will not be included. So if a flat is not paying anything, no consideration, no GST. If there is a consideration and the consideration is above 7,500, then GST will trigger. Okay. Services, somebody was asking banking services. Yes, Reserve Bank of India exempted. Services by way of extending deposits or loans, right? They give deposits, loans on which they collect interest, no GST. But interest involved in credit card services, for credit card payment, you have delayed it. So credit card companies will charge interest. Credit card interest, taxable. The FD or the OD, whatever we take and we pay interest on that, no GST. Inter-se sale or purchase of foreign currency amongst banks. When I buy a foreign currency from a private agent, it is taxable. But from within the banks to authorized dealers, within the banks or from one bank to another authorized dealers, within internally, that is exempted of foreign currency. Then services provided by a banking company to a basic savings bank account holder under the PMJDY, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, is exempted. Like banking charges, what has been levied to us, on that they will charge GST, but the banking charges levied to PMD scheme will be exempted. Services of life insurance business provided by way of annuity under the National Pension Scheme. So, National Pension Scheme is exempted. Services of a life insurance under the National Pension Scheme. Services of insurance business agreed to provide by the Army, Navy, or Air Force. Then services of life insurance to naval group insurance. So these are all there, and we'll have to remember this. Nothing much to explain in these cases. So life insurance business, again, various schemes are there, which is taxable as exempted. Then general also is exempted, various general insurance schemes. Various schemes are there, which you have to understand. Then services by specified bodies. There are specialized bodies who are administrating the funds of various people. Like if an employee is having a salary below 21,000, he has to register under the employee state insurance. This is called as ESI. So when employee state insurance is there, the ESI provides services and collects some charges from the employers. They have to pay some processing fees. Now, on this processing fees, this is going to the government, which is the ESI. They will collect these charges for their maintenance, and they will provide this hospitalization services to the employees. So this collection by the ESI is exempt. Similarly, Provident Fund, National Pension Scheme. So they will collect some charges from the employers. So these charges are all exempted. Services by ESI, EPFO, NPS is exempted. Then IRDAI, Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India, collects charges from the insurance companies. SEBI collects charges from the listed companies, collects from the stock holdings. Then coal mines, provident fund organizations. All of these government entities are all exempted. Whatever charges they collect will be exempted. Okay. Other exempt services, services by way of transfer of a going concern. This we had understood somewhere in the chart section also. Services by way of transfer of a going concern. So if I'm closing down my business, right? If I find a buyer and I'm selling the business as such liability whole as a going concern, same business he will continue. Okay, either one entity, one unit, or the whole business. If I'm transferring as a going concern, then it is exempt. Very important, because in terms of mergers, amalgamations, it becomes a good way to plan up, saying that if it's a going concern, you don't have to pay GST on it. But if you sell it in lots and barrels, like if you sell it in bits and pieces, you're selling assets separately, you're selling stock separately, and you're not continuing it, then you will have to pay GST on that. But better is to sell it as a going concern so that there will not be any GST on it. Then services provided by and to FIFA. Okay, this is the old thing when the World Cup 2020 was there. This may not be relevant now. Then supply of service associated with transit cargo to Nepal and Bhutan. Any transit cargo to Nepal and Bhutan will be exempted. Services by way of renting of residential dwelling for use as a residence. So residential, it is exempted, but there is an amendment. We'll get into detail in this. Then satellite launch service supplied by Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, Antrix Corporation, and New Space India Limited. Only these three will be exempted. What is TDS on FDs? So TDS is when you deduct, when you have a FD and interest is paid, TDS is deduct on that. That is TDS on FDs. Now let's go and understand specifically the statutory updates, what are there, so that we'll understand everything in detail here. Let me just share the screen. Okay. So what are the exemptions from GST in this case? What are the amendments? So there have been some amendments which are relevant for your exams. So whatever we have studied, if there is any amendment specifically, I'll mention it over here. Services by the central government, state government, union territory or local authority, excluding the following services, which means these were taxable, right? Now that has been removed. So services by Department of Posts, by way of speed post, express parcel post provided to central government, state government, union authority was there. That is no more there now. And also services in relation to airport or vessel in that continuous services of airport considers PAT services. What we are saying, out of that, P is gone. So services by the central government, state government, union territory or local authority is exempted. Excluding was Department of Posts, by way of speed post, express parcel post, life insurance agency services. It was taxable under forward charge. Now it is exempted. So any services of postal provided to another government entity will be, so one government to another government will be exempted. Earlier it was taxable. This safe, what we said, was taxable. From 8th July 2020, it is exempted. Okay. Aircraft is always taxable. Goods transport is always taxable. Other than exclusion, no. So these are taxable services. Other than this is all exempted. Services provided by the central government, state government, again same thing. Department of Posts, aircrafts and transport passengers will be exempted now. Earlier taxable, now it is exempted. Then services provided by the central government, state government or local authority. However, nothing contained in this entity shall apply to Department of Posts. So basically they're saying that in various places Department Posts were there. Now they're saying Department of Posts providing services to the government is exempted. Then services provided by the central government, same year, where the consideration is 5,000 rupees. Okay, now residential dwelling. Services by way of renting of residential dwelling for use as residence was the exemption earlier. Now, what is highlighted in dark is the amendment which is included now. Okay, the Department of Posts would be taxable. Department of Posts providing to government will be exempted. Department of Posts providing to others will continue to be exempted. Service by way of renting of residential dwelling was completely exempted. Now they're saying that except where the residential dwelling is rented to a registered person. So if I am, let's need it completely, explanation. For the purpose of this exemption under this entry shall cover services by way of renting of residential dwelling to a registered person where the registered person is a proprietor or a proprietorship concern and rents the residential dwelling in his personal capacity for use as his own residence. And such renting is on his own account and not on that of a proprietorship concern. Okay, which means earlier, now what will happen is renting was provided by a proprietor. So this mostly covers for a proprietorship concern. Now a proprietor is having his personal account and he's having his proprietorship business also. Now if he's providing this renting of residential dwelling, except where the residential dwelling is rented to a registered person. So if I rent this thing to a registered person, right? Now if this registered person is using it, then I have to pay GST. Now, they have clarified for the purpose of this exemption, this entry covers services by way of renting of residential dwelling to a registered person, where this registered person is a proprietor of a proprietorship concern and rents the residential dwelling in his personal capacity for use as his own residence, and such renting is on his own account and not on that of his proprietorship. Okay, so if he's using it for his business, then it becomes taxable. If he's using for his personal purpose, okay, then it will not be taxable, it will be exempt. Like I am registered, I've taken a rental property or renting of my personal use because I'm staying there. So that is exception, except where the residential dwelling is rented to a registered person, which means if I have taken it for my residential purpose, it will not be taxable. But if I take it for my business purpose, it will be taxable. Okay. So if I'm using it for my business and I'm registered, it will be taxable. If I have taken it for my personal purpose, it will be exempted. Postal service to government is taxable and others is exempt. No, others was already taxable. Now to government also, government it is exempted. Earlier it was taxable to government. Now to government it becomes exempted. Okay, residential dwelling. Earlier there were a lot of loopholes. So to plug out those loopholes, they've got this and they have come up with the explanation also. So this explanation gives clarification saying that if you are using it for your personal use, then don't pay GST. But if you're using for your business use, then you have to pay GST. Transportation of passengers with or without accompanied belongings by air in economy class, embarking or terminating in any airport located in this Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Bogadra are at a place. Right? This exemption was there. However, nothing contained. So this Batman still continues. Now, non-air conditional contract carriage was exempted, right? We said air condition will be taxable, non-air condition will be taxable. Then stage carrier also, other than air condition, right? Other than air condition was exempted. Now it continues as exemption only, but if you are using this through an e-commerce operator, then it will be taxable. Okay, like if I book a cab, non-AC cab, okay, through a e-commerce operator, then it will be taxable. But if I'm directly booking through the cab, it will still continue to be exempted. If I'm booking through an e-commerce operator, that's why because the liability on these cabs is on the e-commerce operator. That's why you have said that e-commerce operator will have to pay GST on all the cabs what they book. So there will not be any distinction between air conditioned and non-air conditioned. On all the cabs which are booking through e-commerce operator, it will be liable to GST. Only with respect to B and C. But in case of those Batmans, okay, that will continue to be exempted. So in other words, in case where services of transportation of passengers by non-air conditioned contract carriage other than radio taxi, excluding tourism conducted tour, charter or hire, or by non-air conditioned stage carrier are supplied through e-commerce, such services are not exempt from GST. Right? It is not exempted and it will be taxable. And further, the tax on such service shall be paid by the e-commerce operator. Okay. Then relief materials. We had given a name called random, right? Relief materials, agriculture produce, N stands for newspaper, defense, and railway equipments. Now that railway equipments, we said that if it's transportation by rail, random plus railway equipments. Now that railway equipments is gone, only random goods will be exempted. So on railway equipments and materials, GST will apply. Then services provided by a GTA by way of agriculture produce, milk, relief, random continues. There was this limit of 1,500 and 750, which we have already striked off. So that will not apply. Earlier, what was it? It was very small transportation of you were doing up to 1,500 and 750 rupees, no GST. But now they've said that that limit is not there. So any value, even if you charge 10 rupees for your transportation of goods, you have to pay GST on that. Non-AC cab through Ola or Uber is taxable under GST. Correct. Non-AC cab through Ola or Uber is now chargeable to GST. What is stage carriage and contract carriage? So stage carriage is from one state to another stage. There used to be stage carriages. That's called stage carriage. Mostly like long bus journeys where they transport passengers from one stage, like not one stop. Few stops are called as stages. From one stage to another stage is called as a stage carrier. Contract carriages wherein within wherever you want they take you. That is called contract carriage. Like you book a Uber or Ola, you tell them till what time you want, till what place you want to go. Like you decide the destination. That's a contract carriage. You're giving a contract to take it for a specified location. That's a contract carriage. So if I take a shop on rent basis, then I have to pay GST. Yes, if you take a shop on rent, it is a non-residential purpose. So non-residential purpose liable to GST. So if I book Ola cab directly through Ola cab app, then it is exempted. But if I book through other e-commerce app, then it is taxable. No. If you book through Ola app, then it is taxable because Ola is an e-commerce operator. So e-commerce operator, you book a Ola cab, you're booking a cab through Ola, it is taxable. That tax on that cab will be paid by the e-commerce operator. And if you book, if you're taking a cab directly from a driver, okay, you know the driver, he's holding a car. If you're taking directly, then it is exempted. Service by way of storage or warehousing of, we had mentioned so many lists: cereals, pulses, fruits. Okay. Now, what is only covered? Service by way of storage or warehousing of cereals, pulses, fruits, and vegetables, which means nuts, spices, copra, sugarcane, jaggery, raw vegetable fibers, cotton, flax, jute. All of this will be tea, coffee. We're all exempted. Now it becomes taxable. Okay. So service or storage of only cereals, pulses, fruits, and vegetables. Very easy to understand now. Cereals, pulses, fruits, and vegetables is exempted. Cereals, pulses, fruits, vegetables, storage and warehousing is exempted. Okay. Everything else is taxable. Services relating to cultivation of plants and rearing of all life forms of animals. Here, what is the change? Services by way of fumigation in a warehouse. So fumigation services we said was exempted. Now it becomes taxable. So fumigation services in a warehouse becomes taxable. Okay, sir, book from such app is also taxable. Yes, they generally don't book, but some places if they have booking of the app, booking of a bus from this app, it is also taxable. Like you have this buses and you use Airbus, Red Bus, that is also taxable. Fumigation, earlier exempted, now taxable. Healthcare services. Healthcare services by way of clinical establishment, authorized. However, nothing is entry shall apply to services, which means everything is exempted, but this will become taxable, provided by a clinical establishment by way of providing room, having room charges exceeding 5,000 rupees per day to a person, which means if the room rate for ICU, NICU, ICU care, CCU, NICU, special treatment where they give, wherein you're very critical and you take to special rooms. So on that special rooms, no GST, but normal rooms, right? Normal rooms, if the charges is more than 5,000 rupees, then on that patient, GST will apply. But otherwise, other ones all exempted. So if you go to hospital, don't be worried that you will get liable to GST. You will not be. What is fumigation? We had discussed this during our last session on agriculture, wherein some gases is being sprayed in the warehouse to keep it away from pests and mosquitoes and other kind of insects. So the gases, what they've spread is called fumigation. So that is taxable now. Services by way of training or coaching in recreational activities related to arts, culture, sports by charitable entities was exempted. Now it becomes taxable. So now what is it? Services by way of training or coaching in recreational activities relating to arts or culture by an individual. Earlier, it was by charitable entities. Now it is a recreational activities relating to arts or culture by an individual or sports by a charitable entity registered under 12AA or 12AB. Okay. Earlier there was a confusion whether arts and culture also was by this entity. Now they are giving a clarification by giving two separate categories. So recreational activities relating to arts and culture to be by an individual, and sports and charitable sports should be by a charitable entity. So that's only a clarification. So hospital room even exceeding 5,000 is exempted now? No. Hospital room exceeding 5,000 is taxable now. Below 5,000 is exempted. So small patients, I can pay only 1,000 rupees. It means a poor person who is not a rich person. More than 5,000 is a rich person, so he can afford GST. So more value on that, they are collecting GST. Okay. Then what are the new exemptions which have been introduced? Services by the Department of Posts by postcard, inward letter, book post, and ordinary post. So these are being exempted. Earlier, these were left out. Now they have been included. Services by way of postcards, inland letter, book post, and ordinary post are being exempted. Then tour operator service, which is performed partly in India and partly outside India, supplied by a tour operator to a foreign tourist. Okay, supplying to a foreign tourist is exempt to the extent the value of the tour service which is performed in India. So if it's a foreign tourist and you're giving a consolidated tour, then to the extent of tours in India, it will be exempted. Tours outside India, okay, it will be taxable. However, the value of the tour operator service performed outside India shall be such proportionate of the total consideration charged for the entire tour, which will equal to the proportionate with the number of days. If there's a foreigner who's coming to India and you are giving a tour package for 30 days in India and 15 days in Nepal. So proportionate you have to calculate because you'll give a consolidated value. So you have to take the proportionate and exempt only which is there in India. The value of the tour operator service performed outside India shall be such proportion of the total consideration charged for the entire tour, which is equal to the proportion which the number of days for which the tour is performed outside India has to be total number of days comprising the tour, or 50% of the total consideration of the entire tour, whichever is less. So either you do the number of days, but you're saying, no, I cannot determine based on number of days because it's a complete package. Then, okay, 50%. So 50% taxable, 50% exempted. Okay. Further, in making the above calculations, any duration of time equal to or exceeding 12 hours shall be considered as one full day. The calculation mechanism will be that if he's spending more than 12 hours, then it will be treated as one day. And less than 12 hours will be treated as half a day to calculate the number of days. This exemption is coming only when it's a foreign tourist. What is a foreign tourist has been defined. Foreign tourist means a person who is not normally resident in India, who enters India for a stay of not more than 6 months for legitimate non-immigration purpose. So it's not like that he's coming to India and doing some business and going. He's only coming for non-immigration purpose for a tour purpose. Now, who's a tour operator? That has also been defined. A tour operator means a tour operator service. A tour operator provides a tour of the example what they've given, and they've given the calculation. So if a tour operator provides a tour operator service to a foreign tourist, 3 days in India and 2 days in Nepal, consideration charges 1 lakh. So then exemption is for 2/5, which is 2 divided by 5 of or 50,000, whichever is less. So 40,000 is less. It will be so taxable value is only 60,000. So what is the exemption saying? Exemption is for within India, no? Which is performed partly in India, partly also supplied by a tour operator or foreign tour to the extent of the value of tour operator which is performed outside India. So foreign tours would be exempted, Indian tours would be taxable. So we know 3 is in India, 2 is in Nepal. So 40% is outside India, it will be exempted to that extent. So 40,000 will be exempted, or 50,000, whichever is less. So we have to compute whichever is less and do it. 2 in India, 3 in Nepal, then it becomes 60. So 60 or 50, whichever it is, 50,000 will be exempted. 2.5 days in India, 3 in Nepal, then what you'll do? Proportionate date. So even if it is 0.5 day also, you can consider it. Okay, so this is very clear. Where to get this new amendment list? This is there in the Board of Studies as a statutory update. You have supplementary study material and statutory update. In the Board of Studies, you have amendments. Within that amendment, you'll see the statutory update is there. Okay. Services by way of granting national permit to a goods carriage to operate throughout India or contiguous states. So these goods transporters are lorries, basically, not goods transport. Lorry is a better word. Lorry and some vehicles take this national permit to travel because they have to transport goods across India. So this RTO, okay, regional transport authorities, collect the national permit. To give the national permit, they collect some charges. Okay, services by way of granting. So to grant that, they collect some charges. This charges is exempted. Earlier, it was doubtful, so there some used to say taxable, but now it is very clear that services by way of granting national permit to goods carriage to operate throughout India or contiguous states is exempted. Statutory update is inclusive of supplementary? No, statutory update is separate and supplementary study material is separate. So supplementary study material supplements you from the previous version, but statutory updates gives you the updates of the notifications and circular which has been issued. Now, withdrawal of exemptions. What are the exemptions which has been withdrawn? Services by a hotel in guests up to 1,000 rupees. So earlier, up to 1,000 rupees if you charge, like in the, we had said, no, in clubs, in calculation of charitable trust, 999 will be exempt, and others also it was exempt. Now that exemption is gone. For charitable, it will continue, but for non-charitable also in a hotel, if you stay and if you are paying 500 rupees, no GST. But now they're saying even if it is 500 rupees, GST has to be charged. Okay, so any stay in a hotel, in guest house, club, or campsite, by whatever name called, is liable to GST from rupee 1. Very unfortunate, no? But that's a situation that if you stay in a small hotel, also you have to pay GST. If you stay in a big hotel, also you have to pay GST. So, on tax provisions, theoretical questions will ask if yes, we do use the same words language. There will be theoretical question, madam, but you don't have to use the same words. So you don't have to reproduce the section. You have to understand the section and interpret it. You will get some MCQs. You will get some theoretical questions. You get some practical questions. Within that, a theoretical question also will be there. Your explanation will be on a theoretical basis. So to that extent, you have to explain your understanding. You don't have to quote whatever is there in the law or in the notification as such. Then services by way of access to road or bridge on payment of annuity. So you're paying some amount as annuity charges. Now that was exempted. Now annuity charges is taxable. RBI, we said it is exempted. That is also been withdrawn. RBI is taxable. IRDI, Insurance Regulator Development Authority, and SEBI. But PF and all those things continue, right? Like that is not been removed. The others will continue, but SEBI and IRDI will be taxable. Very careful because these authorities are confusing names, but clearly understand SEBI and IRDI and RBI, 3 units. SEBI, RBI, SEBI, IRDI will be taxable. Service of leasing of assets, rolling stock assets by the Indian Railways. So Indian Railways gives leasing of assets. What do they lease? Rolling stock assets, wagons and coaches. They lease it. That will be taxable. Earlier that was exempted, now it is taxable. Services by way of licensing, registration, analysis of food supplies by the FSSAI, Food Standards and Safety Authorities of India. Is a special authority, so wherever food you buy, you'll see a FSSAI registration is being displayed. So for that registration, FSSAI used to charge something that was exempted. Now it is taxable. Services by the goods and service tax network. Okay, the GST network providing services to central government was exempted. Now that is also gone. So GSTN will also collect GST, which means the scope of GST is being increases. Whatever exemptions were there, they've been curtailing it down and they are increasing the scope of the GST. Fumigation and warehouse, this we had discussed. Services by way of slaughtering of animals. Slaughtering of animals was exempted. Now it is taxable. Cord blood banks, that stem cells, what we said, was exempted. Now that is taxable. Then services by way of operator of a biomedical waste treatment. In healthcare services, we understood this biomedical waste treatment. Since it is related to healthcare, it was exempted, but now it is taxable. Okay, then clarification in terms of a mid-meal scheme. So we said that any food supplied to schools will be midday meal schemes will be exempted. So what is the government saying? That any catering service provided to an educational institution is exempt from GST and includes midday meal. So midday meal can be provided by the government or it can be provided by the private authorities. The scope of entry is thus wide enough to cover any serving of any food to a school. So any serving of any food to a school is exempted. So there was a confusion that midday meals should be sponsored only by the government and things like that. But now they've said that not necessarily. If you're buying from a caterer and caterer is providing food to a school, that is also exempt itself. Hence, serving of food to Anganwadis shall also be covered by the said exemption, whether sponsored by the government or through donation from corporates. Everything is exempt. Circular regarding applicability. Service denied to applicable GST on activity of construction of road where the consideration is received in deferred payments. So why these circulars are important? That these amendments are generally being targeted in the exams and they give some questions from that to check the status knowledge of the students, whether you have covered or no. That's the reason these is being specifically discussed. This circular clarifies that the applicability of GST and annuities paid for construction of road where certain portion of the consideration is upfront and remaining is made after payment over the years. It is important that 23A exempts the access to road or bridge on payment of annuity, but it is not our coverage. Thus, it has been clarified that entry 23A does not exempt GST on annuity paid for construction of road. So it exempts the access to road, but it does not exempt the annuity. So any annuity payment made is taxable, but access to roads and bridges will be exempted. Clarification regarding GST on supply of various services by the central or state government, which is, let us understand this, GST is also exempt on input service relating to admission to conduct of exemptions such as online testing services, right? Then services of central government state boards. So any boards selection, what they do is exempted. Entrance exam is exempted. Then all of this is clarification. This is there in the law, in the notification, but it's been clarified now. GST is applicable to other services provided by such boards. So apart from entrance exam, if they're saying any registration fees, then it will be taxable. Only entrance fees is exempted. Then clarification regarding applicability of GST on service supplied by state government to other undertakings or PSU by way of guaranteeing loans. Right? We said giving of guarantee is exempted. That guaranteeing of loans by central or state government for their undertaking a PSU is specifically exempt. So it is a clarification. The issue which arose for consideration was regarding applicability of GST on supply of service by a state government to PSUs. Okay, so PSUs will be exempted. Clarification regarding coaching services supplied by coaching institution and NGOs under the central government scheme of scholarship for students with disabilities. Okay, where the total expenditure is borne by the government by way of government aid, is exempt. So scholarship for students with disabilities is exempt. Clarification of GST on overloading charges at toll plaza. So if there is a toll and overloading charges is there, what they are saying, the additional amount is collected from the users not having a functional FASTag is in the nature of toll charges and should be treated as additional toll charges. Therefore, it is clarified that additional fees collected in the form of higher toll charges from not having vehicles, not having FASTag is essentially payment of toll because toll is exempted. So additional charges for additional is also a toll. So that will also be exempted. Giving on hire, additional clarification regarding renting of vehicles to state transport. Giving on hire is exempted. If you're giving a vehicle on hire to a state transport is exempted. Clarification regarding applicability of GST on application fees charged for entrance of fees charged for issuance of eligibility certificate or migration certificate for educational institution. Okay. Therefore, it can be seen that all services supplied by educational institutions are exempt. Consideration charged by way of entrance fees is also exempt. This exemption is wide enough to cover the migration certificate also. So a migration certificate which has been given is also for entrance, that is also been exempted. Now, transport of minerals by vehicles deployed with the driver for a specific duration of time, which means for mining, if it is for a specific duration fall, it will not be eligible for exemption. It will come under rental service of transportation of vehicles. Then clarification on GST paid on honorarium to guest anchors like Sansad TV and TV channels are there which invite guest anchors. Services provided by the guest anchors is lieu of honorarium. So on honorarium also GST is applicable. So they cannot say that it's an honorarium, so it's not liable to GST. It is equivalent to a consideration for being present on the TV that is liable to GST. Services applicable to GST on services in form of art are IVF, which means assisted reproductive technology or in vitro fertilization. This is in the nature of healthcare services, and these are also covered under healthcare services because what is this? This is in case of a pregnancy problems, there is special treatment. So they're saying, no, this is not a healthcare, but government has clarified that any kind of IVF and ART is also a healthcare, that is also exempt. Clarification regarding applicability of GST on sale of land after leveling or laying down of drainage is again a sale of land and it shall attract GST because services provided for development of land. Just land per se is an immovable property, but if you're doing some development on the land, what are you doing? You're doing leveling, laying of drainage, you're making a colony, you're making a gated community. It is liable to GST. Clarification regarding hiring of vehicles by firms for transportation of their employees. Okay, so if it is by a non-air conditioned contract where transportation takes place over predetermined route or a predetermined schedule, then exemption shall not apply. So transportation of employees, exemption will not apply. Clarification regarding applicability of GST on tickets of private ferry. Okay. Public transport used in the exemption only means transportation for open public, but if it is a private, then it is taxable. Exemption to educational institution and central government board for conduct of entrance examination. Entrance examination is exempted. GST on accommodation services by Air Force mess and other messes to its personnel will all be treated as exempt itself. The issue which arose is whether GST is payable on accommodation services supplied by Air Force mess to its personnel. Therefore, it is hereby clarified the accommodation services provided by Air Force mess and other similar messes, okay, is for stay of residential purpose only, and they will be covered and they will be exempted. Okay, very elaborative. Please read through this and you will get clarity. But read it like a story, then you will understand it. If you try to mug it up or if you try to by heart it, then you will lose it. You have to understand the concept so that if the concept flashes in your exam, you'll be able to remember it. Late fee charges paid to school is chargeable? No, it is in the nature of education service itself, so that will be exempted. Okay. Let's take some practical questions, like how the questions will appear in the exam so that you know how to phase it and what to answer them. So we'll take some questions and then go to MCQs. I am a trader dealing with only tax exempt supplies. Okay. Is it necessary to register under GST if my turnover exceeds 20 lakhs? So this is a part of a registration chapter, but since it deals with exempted goods, that's why I have picked up this question. Okay, if in the registration you'll see that the threshold limit is 20 lakhs. Now, if I cross 20 lakhs, I have to register. Now, my turnover is crossed 20 lakhs. Should I register or not? Yes, not necessary to register. Yes. So what about the remaining services like mentioned business facilitators? Yes, compulsory registration. Okay. Since it is crossing 20 lakhs, we feel that they have to register, but no, there is no requirement of registration under GST if a person is dealing with 100% exempt goods. So, under registration chapter, you will get it clarity. Okay. Yeah, sure. So, I'm waiting for you to answer. Amount charged for service provided by selectors of a sports body. So, in sports body, we have two categories. One is the coaches and one is the selectors. Services provided to a recognized sport body only by an individual as a player, referee, umpire, coach, or team manager. Only so these five people will be exempt. But if it's a selector, okay, then it will be taxable. So if you're a player, fine. If you're a referee, fine. If you're an umpire, fine. You're on the field, we understand. Apart from this, if you're a coach or a team manager, then and that should be for a recognized sporting entity. This is my question is on a recognized sporting entity, but you're a selector and you're getting some charges. So selector will be taxable, it will not be exempted. Okay. So only five people will get exempted is player, referee, umpire, coach, and team manager. Now, is service provided by way of vehicle parking to a public in a shopping mall exempted? Well, no, services provided by way of vehicle parking to general public are not exempted from GST. Okay. Then Ram, an agriculturist. Next slide. Ram, an agriculturist, has stored sugarcane in a warehouse. He has taken fumigation service for the said warehouse from Gupta Pest Control Company, for which he has paid consideration of rupees 6,000. Is it taxable or no? Exempted, but now, but after amendment, it is taxable. So if you mention this, then they know that, okay, you had read the amendment. It was exempted earlier, but after amendment, it is taxable. Okay. Next, Purva acts as a team manager for Indian Sports Authority, a recognized sports body, for a tennis tournament organized by a multinational company and received a remuneration of 2 lakhs. Is it taxable or exempted? The services are being provided by a team manager to a recognized sporting body, but the sporting event should be a recognized sport body. Okay. It is not a recognized sporting body. It should be organized. Here it is recognized sport body, but it is organized by a multinational company. So it should be organized also by a recognized sporting body. Then only it will be exempted. Otherwise, it is taxable. Very careful. The term is it should be recognized means what? It should be event should be organized by a recognized sport body. Sir, player, referee, coaches, exempted for what is it? For services? Yes, they provide services. No, so they money what they earn, players what money they receive, prize money. Those are all exempted if it is recognized. It is organized by a recognized sports body. Kian Enterprises and event organizers provide services to Breathing Wall Limited by way of organizing business exhibition as a part of Make in India initiative. Now, Kian Enterprises claims that it is not required to pay GST as the service provided, okay, as the service provided are by way of organizing business exhibitions are exempt from GST. So, is it so? Is what we have to analyze. So the answer is service provided by an organizer to any person in respect of business exhibition are exempt only when such business exhibition is held outside India. Okay. So if an Indian person is providing some business exhibition, organizing of that exhibition, if that exhibition is held outside India, then there is an exemption. However, since the given case, the exhibition is organized in India, then the service of organization of event by Kian will not be exempt. It will be taxable. So that's another exemption. Next question. ST Limited has given 5 trucks to T2 Transport of Delhi for transporting goods in Central and West Delhi. The hiring charges for the trucks are 7,500 per truck per day. Examine whether GST is applicable. So this is not a GTA question. This is a question of giving of truck to a GTA. So GTA is not payable. GST is not payable in case of hiring of trucks to T2 transporters. Services by way of giving and hire to a GTA is by means of transport are exempted. So GTA will charge GST or not charge GST, that we know under reverse charge. But when I am giving a truck to a GTA, if I am giving my vehicle to a GTA, that is exempted. So there's another exemption wherein trucks given, vehicles given, conveyance given to a GTA are exempted. Okay. After becoming CA, how can we stay updated with these amendments? You have to keep reading these amendments because now for exams, it's all coming in one shot. But when you are in practice, it keeps coming on different dates. So you have to keep yourself updated with it. That's how you keep up to date in your practice. Multiple choice questions. Now, Mr. Panduranga booked a Kalyan Mandapam in Tirupati for his daughter's marriage. Rent of the premises is 20,000 rupees. Mr. A booked few rooms near Kalyan Mandapam for accommodating the guests. Rent of the room is 850 per day. Which of the transactions are taxable or exempt? Both transactions are taxable. Renting is taxable. Kalyan Mandapam is taxable. Renting of room is exempted. Both transactions are exempted. Or room is taxable. Renting is Kalyan Mandapam is exempted. Most of you are given correct answer. Renting of Kalyan Mandapam is taxable because the value is 9,999. Rooms, the limit is 9,999, which is less. So it is exempted and this is taxable. X Private Limited providing services of advancement of skill development to various companies. X Private Limited is not paying GST by the notion that services related to advancement of skill development are exempt under GST. Is their contention correct? If it is correct, what is the correct reasoning? But sir, in amendment, you said now rooms under 1,000. So that is for hotel rooms, not for charitable thing. Charitable, that 999 still continues. Okay, Jeevan Kishore, that 1,000 I said now is amendment earlier. Hotel rooms up to 919, up to 1,000 was exempted. Now hotel rooms becomes exempted. Charitable organizations, 12AA entities, charitable trusts doing this accommodation up to 999 continues to be exempted. Ishan, on leasing services, you can read it. It is very easy to understand. Okay. So the correct answer, you are very confusing here. The correct answer is B. X Limited is liable to GST because the service related to advancement of skill development. So in charitable trust, we had seen that advancement of skill development provided by charitable trust only is exempted. Here it is. It is providing to whom? It is providing to various companies. But what did we see there? It is to specified person, orphanage, things like that, right? So only to those, if they're provided, it is exempted. But if they're providing to companies, then it is taxable. Mr. Yatra 2 is enter into a bilateral agreement with Kumaon Mandal Vikas Nigam Limited. It is providing services in respect of Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. Is Yatra tours chargeable to GST? Okay, Ms. Bhumika, what is your question on page number 4.9? Take this. Renting of rooms where charges are 1,000 per day or more is taxable. Correct. So if it is 1,000 or more, it is taxable. But if it is 1,000 or less, that's why I said 999. If it is that value, then it is exempted. Okay. What about the answer on this? Everybody is saying option D. Why D? Service with respect to Kailash Mansarovar is not chargeable since it has entered into bilateral agreement. No. The correct answer is B. Correct answer is C, not B and D. Because they never said they have to enter into any bilateral agreement. They just said that services provided by KMVNL. But this is not KMVNL. This is service provided by Yatra Tours. So service provided by Yatra Tours might be in bilateral agreement, but that bilateral agreement is not recognized by the law. So this bilateral agreement is not recognized by the law, so it will not be treated as exempted. So you have to read between lines and then interpret it. Okay, next question. Which of the following services are exempt from GST? Conversion, warehousing, conversion, service by way of fumigation. Five, answer is B, correct. Because only warehousing of rice and forest produce is exempted. Everything else is taxable. Correct. You have understood the agricultural aspects very well. Mr. A met with an accident and was hospitalized. Mrs. A is staying with Mr. A in the hospital to take care. Right? Mrs. A is taking food from the canteen which is maintained by the hospital. GST officer demanded GST for the food facility provided by the hospital to Mr. A and Mrs. A by stating that it is not a healthcare service. Is this intention correct? Is the contention correct? Six, answer is B. Very good. So you have understood the interpretation. Food facility provided to Mr. A is a part of composite supply of healthcare and not separately taxable. However, food provided to Mrs. A by canteen is liable to GST. Correct. Seventh one, Mr. X is a business facilitator to SBI Bank with respect to accounts in its rural branch and urban branches. Are these services exempt? Yeah. So this business facilitator services we have not discussed, but business facilitator services are exempted which are related to rural branches. So a business facilitator providing service to bank is wherein he gets the customers and encourages people to deposit money. Now, if that service, if it does in rural areas, it will be taxable. But if it does in urban branches, it will be rural areas, it is exempted. If it is in urban areas, it will be taxed. Miss Geeta is a dancer in Bharatanatyam. She acts as a brand ambassador to a dancing institute. Is she liable to pay GST? Eight option is D. Yes. Providing services as a brand ambassador is taxable under GST, even though the amount of consideration is rupee 1. This explanation is just to give you a clue, but in your examinations, you may not get such a detailed thing. So you may have to understand it and then interpret it. Might you will have to give the explanation saying that it is taxable because it's a brand ambassador. Okay. Anyways, everybody's given the correct answer here. Miss Pavitra is a dancer performing a 4-hour classical art form and charge amount of rupees 1,49,999. Is she liable to pay GST? Nine, B and C. People are confused with B and C. Does not fall under service definition. No, it does fall under service definition. Performing of arts. The correct answer is B. Performance in folk and classical consideration up to 50 light is exempted. Right? So it is, correct answer is B. Last question for the day and for my session. Mr. ABC is conducted a circus in Anantapur. Entrance fees is 550 per person. Is this transaction taxable under GST? Collection up to 1,50,000 is total collection per person. The performers, the tax is on the performer, not on the event or the event company. If I am performing at the event, I have to pay GST. So it is on my value. How much am I charging for my performance? If I am charging 1,49,000, then I am exempt. If I am charging 1,60,000, I am taxable. Correct. 1,50,000 is that for the dancer. Correct answer, yes, or it is 10B, the taxable under GST because the consideration amount is more than 500 rupees. Great. So that brings the end to the exemption chapter and my theoretical portion. So your questions and your interactions were very interactive and very informative, very knowledgeable. I will come back again in the 2 sessions on my practical question answers. So if you have some questions, follow-up questions, if you didn't understand some terms, of course, on exemptions, we had to hurry up because of the time. And exemptions, you'll have to read it 2-3 times at a fast pace, because you can't spend much time on any chapter. You have to give equal time to all of the chapters. So my suggestion is read the chapters fastly 2-3 times, so it will get traced in somewhere in your memory lanes, so that you can reproduce it. But otherwise, if there is any more questions which you have, you can definitely ask during the practical session. I'll take up your questions and then we'll start with the question answer session. Link this with the other chapters. Input tax credit was the main thing which we had discussed. That link it with the next chapter. You will try to find it, and at least if your basics now, if it is clear, it is really good that you will develop a better understanding in your next chapters. I hope I have done a clearing and putting base for your basics very clear, because if the foundation is good, then the pillar will stand better and your tower will stand better. If your basics is weak, then everything is shaken. I hope I have made your basics strong. Then you could understand any concept. You read through the book, you'll understand it. Will you get these MCQs? Yes, I will share the presentation with these MCQs. Thank you, Darshan. Thank you, Bhumika. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and for your participation. Thank you very much.